Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I want to start off with my experience with Scott Pilgrim. I've never read the comic / graphic novel. I have seen the movie technically 2 1/3 of a time maybe, because I've recently seen bits and pieces of the movie, but not the full movie. But I've seen the movie twice in its totality. Once when it originally was in theaters, and once several years ago I rewatched it on Comedy Central. So yeah, but even once again, it's still been years since I've seen the full movie, so I don't remember everything. So I remember some stuff just because of bits and pieces I've seen fairly recently, but other than that. But either way, I really like the leaning. I mean, obviously, even the movie leans into the very video game aesthetic that I think is very true to the comic itself. But even the whole episode title and saying press start, I was like, ooh, I love that. But even I think I vaguely remember the whole Ramona being the girl of his dreams and stuff like that, but them even explaining it oh yeah, she's it was a quicker way to get through, the subspace in your mind is 15 seconds. I was because there's a lot they just kind of skip over in the movie, because obviously it's a movie, so you have to keep things fairly condensed. So the show's going to flush stuff out a little bit more. For example, we have Gideon showing up, and I'm Gideon didn't show up until right near the end of the movie, right? I mean, he's the final evil X and everything, right? But I think that's the first time so I think he's going to be sprinkled in a lot more throughout the show, and we get a little more interactions. I think we get to flesh out the evil X's a little bit more than what we got on screen, obviously, in the movie. So that's going to be pretty dope. I mean, even that conversation between Matthew and Gideon, and it's they got all this data on Scott, and it's he's dating he's dating a high schooler? Because I remember them shitting on Scott so much more in the movie because he's dating a high schooler, and maybe they do it in the comic as well, but they haven't done it as much so far, but maybe they're going to do it a little bit more later on, because he keeps dancing around it. We're not dating, but we're kind of not dating, so it's a kind of sort of situation. But I love that Matthew was and they call us evil. He's dating. I don't know if it's specifically because he's dating a high schooler, or specifically because he's dating a high schooler and he's trying to go out with a Ramona without letting her know. And it's that's truly evil. Because so far, no one shit on him specifically for the fact he's 22, 23, dating a 17-year-old. So. And obviously, she's super, super, super into Scott. I mean, I've always, once again, I've never read the comic, but I have heard the difference between the movie and the comic is Scott Pilgrim is a major asshole. They make him a lot more likable in the movie, and I'm curious because I don't know if this is going to be a full it's not going to be a 1-to-1 adaptation. I'm sure they're going to make modifications just like the movie did. It probably might be a blend of somewhere in between, closer to the comic than it is the movie, but probably taking certain elements and filling vibes from the movie and translating. But like I said, I know Scott's supposed to be much more of an asshole in the comics, so maybe this will kind of get represented in this series more. But it is a nice refresher to kind of be once again, knowing who everyone is. I completely forgot that Anna Kendrick played his sister. I completely forgot that until she popped up. I was wait. I was is that supposed to... Stacy? I was wait, is that Anna Kendrick's character? That's who she... Because, is she in the movie a lot? Once again, I've seen bits and pieces of it recently, but not, the full movie, so that I don't remember her storyline at all. I also didn't even remember she's actually closer to Knives' age than Scott is, because she's 19. That's interesting. I also love because obviously, that's one of my favorite things about Scott Pilgrim, even just the movie of, the video game aesthetic they had with it. Like I said, I think that's just true to the comic. But even, art style-wise, it, very much reminds me, I wondered, it's from the comic book, but obviously when I think about it in, motion and stuff, it makes me think of that, side-scroller beat-em-up game. I've never played it, but I've seen it around the Scott Pilgrim game, that... It kind of aesthetically reminds me of that, but I could think obviously that's even being truer to the art style of the comic itself. But the fact is that I don't know, just like the sound effects and stuff like that is just because like I said, the movie had it, but I think because it is in an animated format, they can lean into it even more. Hell, even giving us like the anime-esque opening. I know people are like, some people get so caught up in there, like, this isn't an anime, it wasn't anime in Japan. Shut up. The fact of yes, it's it might, like, maybe parts of it are, because Korea does a lot of like Japanese animation, like maybe like some of it could be animated in Korea, but it could just be like, fine, it's an American anime, like it's an American cartoon or Canadian cartoon. Like I don't know where the production for this was, whether it actually was in Canada or whether it was in the US, but it's like, fine, it's anime inspired. Like, people get so like anal about that, like, oh, it's not anime. It's like, shut up. You get, when people say that, you know what they mean. It's going for an anime aesthetic. Like more recently, like My Adventures with Superman type of situation. Tangents and all that aside, but I love the opening, and it's really cute, and it feels like you would see like an anime. It actually kind of gives me that blend of like an anime plus like a mid 2000s like you would like a Teen Titans Go, which I mean not Teen Titans Go, jeez, nothing against Teen Titans Go, but I meant specifically the earlier 2000s original Teen Titans animated series, which was very like anime style inspired. So it's like, yeah, that opening and everything too. So it is kind of like a very like 2000s style thing meeting like an anime aesthetic. What's Ramona's job always delivering Netflix DVDs? I was like, there's no way that's what her job was. I was like, the moment they did, I was like, shut the fuck up. I was like, is that something? Maybe that was what it was originally in the comics, and it's just like, that's just too meta. Oh my god! Speaking of meta, there was that joke from him. He was like, "Oh yeah, there were two Sonic cartoons at the same time." Like, can you imagine that? The same guy playing two different versions of the character. I was like, wait, that can't be. That has to be a line they wrote specifically for the show, right? Because I'm like, I feel like I remember the Sonic conversation from the movie. But holy crap, dude, I was like, that's super meta. Obviously, it's like Michael Cera playing two different versions of the character. He played the version of the character in the movie. Here he is playing a version of, like, that's a super meta joke. That's why I feel like the Netflix DVD thing has to be like, oh, they found out that Netflix was doing, like, getting it, so they're like, oh, so we'll make a joke about it. It's like, because I guess they're also setting this up to be like, obviously, because they even have the opening of like, oh, this is in Canada and not too long ago, so it's kind of like, okay, so this isn't set present day, because she is delivering DVDs from Netflix, and they have not done that in a very, very long time. So I'm like, okay. So I wonder, is this supposed to take, because I don't know, like, if the comic specifically took place in a specific time frame, because I wonder, was Netflix was around when the original movie came out, wasn't it? Because that was like 2010, 2011 when the movie originally came out, so I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to be more specifically in that time frame, or just maybe even just in the time frame that because I don't remember when the comic came out. There's even that line about like Scott's previous jobs, which I thought was so interesting. He's like, "Oh no, we'll probably explore that in a later episode or something like that." Which I'm like, "Oh, that's once again, it's just going to be a very like fourth wall." I think it's fourth wall breaking in some regards, but not. I don't think it goes full all the way, but it has like those meta fourth wall breaking elements like that. Because once again, there was just so much in the world of Scott Pilgrim that's just not explained, but I think it's explained a lot more in the comics. But I think it's also one of those things like you kind of don't need to know, because I mean, I was perfectly fine with them not explaining, just like, yeah, this is the way this world is. Like, oh, because they even brought it up like, oh yeah, Scott's actually a really good fighter. At least Gideon was like, oh yeah, like he's the toughest guy in like Toronto or something like that. Because with all the information they had gathered on Scott. Also, like, him and Ramona, like, being, like I said, I don't remember their first, like, date that well from the movie, but it was actually kind of cute, them kind of walking in the code and getting to know each other, and her using, like, her subspace powers or whatever to kind of, like, oh, there's a door nearby, and it's in the middle of the street, she opens it, and it's like, oh, here we are magically at my apartment. It's just, once again, Scott's like, okay, I don't quite understand it, but I'm gonna go with it. Like I said, that just the nature of, like, yeah, this weird world is weird, and we don't know the history of how weird this world is, but we're just kind of going along with it just because it's kind of pre-established even before the events of this movie that just things are weird in this world, and we just kind of accept it. Like, didn't they act? I guess they didn't have, once again, I don't remember the movie that was some like, And I'm kind of perfectly fine with not remembering bits and pieces, but not everything. But I'm like, did they really just sleep in this bed together? I thought they actually had sex. Maybe they did in a movie, but I them like not having sex, and she's like, oh, I'm like putting myself in a position where like I can change my mind later. And Scott was like, oh, cool, awesome. So they just laid in the bed next to each other, and just to keep warm. I guess it's not as bad. It's still like, you're emotionally cheating on Knives because you might not think you're dating, but it's because you're skating around it because you don't want to kind of label it, even though you want to label it with you and Ramona. But the fact of the matter is, it's like they've never kissed. They've only held hands once, apparently. I also don't remember the declaration from the evil exes being like, yo, where I'm from the evil egg, like Matthew sent the letter and everything. I even love him being like, yo, I hand delivered it through a blizzard, homie. And you completely ignored it. It's like, oh, evil exes, blah, 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 blah. Ramona knew about it, but she was like, I thought it was some kind of joke. Me and Matthew, which I don't remember them exploring that past at all. But yeah, like all in middle school, they dated back then. The fact of the matter, which immediately makes me think of like, God, what was that little Dicky song? Was it My Ex-Boyfriend? It reminds me of that because, spoilers, if you've never heard that song, it's a song. It's quite a few years old, but it's kind of got that thing of like, oh yeah, like this dude, like my ex, he's my ex from like elementary school or middle school, ends up being kind of like the whole twist bit to the song. So I'm like, it kind of gives me that thought, but it's like, yeah, we kissed like once and then we dated like for like a week and a half, and then we kind of broke it off. And then because he went to a different school, like he wasn't even evil in high school, which I love that it's just like, oh yeah, like he's evil now, but he wasn't evil when we were dating. He became evil afterwards. So it's not like I purposely dated him with you and he was evil, which I'm assuming, I guess that implies that she dated some of her exes knowing that they were evil already. Like the fact that she made that delineation makes me think that was interesting. It's like, well, what did make you become evil, Matthew? I do love that Wallace continues to be the voice of reason. He's the sarcastic person, but he's like the dry delivery of just like how much he shits on Scott. It's like, yeah, I let you stay here one time and you just never left. Everything here is mine. Like, oh, go get out. It's like, oh, if you want to, you can leave. I'm not making this coffee. It's like I think Wallace enjoys the shitstorm that is Scott's life and just who he is, but also at the same time, it's like, he acts like he can take it and leave it sometimes, but I feel like he does enjoy it too much to kind of fully let it go. But it's just like, once again, the dry delivery, and just because I think Kieran Culkin kind of approached the character. I mean, that's just probably true to the character's nature, even in the comic, but it's like he had that dry delivery in the movie from what I can remember too. So it's just like he kind of has that same like demeanor all the way through. I also love, while this conversation is going down, Knives might be passed out. That has to be considered because like during the Six Bomb performance, she ended up passing out. She ended up literally melting, not literally, but kind of figuratively melting into putty because she was just so like, oh, Scott, oh my God, Sex Bomb is so amazing. Oh, you guys are so great. So, because a lot of that conversation of like, hey, you're trying to date Ramona, I'm like, Knives is right here and she hasn't said anything because it's like, right, she probably got knocked out during that portion of it, so. But yeah, we have Matthew and his mystical powers, as I brought up before, of like, yeah, because Ramona was like, yeah, his mystical powers, my brute strength, we were able to kind of beat up all the football guys that were kind of like super into me. Well, like, what was the reason for that? I guess it's just because they were jocks, and it's like, oh yeah, because he was the only non-white, non-jock dude at the school or something like that, and then maybe she just doesn't fuck with jocks or whatever. Because I'm like, you didn't really give a reason why you guys beat the crap out of like the football team or whatever. But Scott's going up against him, and it's like, well, that's kind of not fair, you having these mystical powers, and he ends up beating Scott, which I was like, wait, what? Because I know, based on the movie, I was like, well, I know he loses in the fight against Gideon. I was like, isn't that the only time he dies? Because he won, like, every other fight first round. Like, there was never, like, I had to come back to it later. Once again, pacing of a movie and stuff like that versus, like, being able to draw stuff out, like, comment. But I'm like, Scott loses the first fight? And because he turns into coins, I'm like, interesting. Like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh, like, is it going to... Because I expected... like I said, I don't fully even remember how the battle went down in the movie fully. But But I do love, like, once again, the fighting game style, like, health bars and stuff like that. Matthew versus Scott. And I love everyone's shocked, like, oh my god. And I love that Julie is literally the only one that's like, oh, good on you. It's like, well, to be fair, she's the one person in the show that hates Scott. She thinks he sucks. So, I mean, it literally says, fun fact, thinks he sucks. So, I mean, I guess in her mind, he was extra sucky for trying to date Ramona, even though she was like, yo, don't date Ramona. I'm like, why I guess because it's like, she's my friend. I don't want how much you suck to kind of like pollute her. But I'm like, we don't really know at the start. I mean, other than like, right, she just doesn't like Scott. But it's like, I guess that's all the reason she needs for Scott not to date Ramona is just because I don't like you and I don't want you dating someone that I'm becoming friends with, I guess. Either way, I'm very excited to have Scott Pilgrim here. Like I said, as someone who hasn't read the comic, who only knows the movie, and even then, once again, it's been a while, so I don't remember everything. It's nice to kind of explore this universe a little bit from the little bit I remember and seeing how they change things, how much stuff stay the same, and how much stuff gets explored more. I'm excited to see kind of the similarities and the differences as we kind of continue and seeing where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.